Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of the beloved Aspire magazine, which has been inspiring women to live their best lives and to live from the inside out for 15 years. If you haven't claimed your free subscription, I invite you to run and get over to subscribe to aspire.com. Your free subscription comes with lots of juicy, transformational free gifts from our friends and partners in the industry. So today we're going to be talking about highly sensitives. And I am one. I'm an empath, so this is one of my favorite conversations. And joining me today is Courtney Marchesani. Courtney is a clinical health coach at Inspired Potentials, an integrative mental health and wellness educator. She's a certified health coach with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and attained her Master's of Science in Mind-Body Medicine from Saybrook University. Courtney provides education and holistic coaching programs for mental health issues such as anxiety, attention deficit, and depression. She specializes in the often hidden mental health and emotional struggles of highly sensitive people and supports them by helping them identify sensory processing issues related to anxiety and depression. And I have to say, she was named the 2017 Writers' Workshop Award winner for her amazing book that we'll be talking about today, called 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. And welcome, Courtney.
Thanks, Linda. I'm really excited to be here on your show.
Well, our paths have crossed, and we've been following each other for a while. And when I saw what you were up to, and then, got to know more about this work that you do with HSPs and helping people understand it, I know it's such an important message. I am one. I've been doing my work for 30 years on myself, way before I knew what HSPs and empaths were. I just knew I processed differently. And so, of course, I struggled for a long time because I didn't know what I didn't know. So now I'm really passionate about bringing, experts like you on this topic to my audience. So what led you on this path to working with highly sensitive people?
Well, I first have to give you credit for knowing, because that it dovetails into the question of how I figured it out. I think every empath has their own unfolding and discovery process, I would call it. And where you're different, sometimes it can be an extreme feeling of separateness. I didn't experience that exactly, but I guess I did. I would say that it came through my lived experience. I was in a very turbulent relationship, and I started to have dreams about individuals who were really bad. There's no other way to say it. They were like flashes of warnings that were like, be careful, be aware. And so I started to express that to my partner at the time. I said, I think that you need to be really careful about this individual. And, he was like, oh, no, it's fine. You're just being paranoid. Well, months later, after having a vivid dream of him going to basically court, we saw it play out live on TV in our living room. And I was shocked, and he was shocked. And at that moment, I definitely knew there was something going on with me. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I would say that was like the first warning that I tuned into. And then there were just more over time. That was in my early 20s. and it magnified. After I left that relationship, which probably isn't surprising, it wasn't a very healthy relationship. I would just say those flashes got bigger, but they also started to happen in the daytime when I would just be at work and I would just get gut feelings. And so I started to really pay attention to them, and they were just magnified. And then in 2001, I prevented a fire in a building. And that's when I had a total transformation moment. And I said to myself, I'm going to figure out what this is, what's happening with me. And so I look back on that, and I think it was an intuitive, empathic insight that I had.
I would say so you have the skill set of being predictive.
Most definitely. And so it was the predictive part that was puzzling to me. I didn't really understand. I guess I wouldn't say that I was fully conscious that I was a deep empath. I started to see in my work as a counselor that I had this ability to connect in a way that was deeply empathic through empathic listening. And so I saw that unfold in my work. But the additional piece of that predictive ability, I didn't understand it. And once I saw it play out and stop that fire in that brownstone in Seattle, I was changed. I would say I was transformed in a way that I became conscious, and I just couldn't let it go as to why that happened. And so I started my search into understanding why I was different in that way. And that's what led eventually to the book, 4 Gifts, is all that research that I did.
So your research was really started because of your personal journey and experience, and that led you onto a path of doing so much research that then turned into this book.
Yes, and I would say that, the unhealthy part of it was that I became a little bit obsessive about it because, like I said, it was a total transformative moment. I feel like my mind, body, and spirit were aligned in a different light. And so at my work, I was working at a major trauma center in Seattle, Washington with, social workers, nurses in the psychiatry department. And I just was seeking help from my community as to why this was happening. And they didn't know. And so that's how I shifted into, okay, this is a different phenomenon. Not everybody experiences it. So that was the first thing. But 2, I was so empathic, I wanted to talk about it, with people who were in the compassion field, but they didn't want to talk about it. I noticed that. And so I lost some, I wouldn't say credibility necessarily, because I was a hard worker and my star was rising in the work that I was doing with housing and homelessness, but it just wasn't acceptable on some level in that clinical setting. And so I started to see that through like social cues, but I still kept working on it because I was fascinated by it.
So it's almost like, like a lot of us experience now, sometimes they'll label it as woo, right? Because they're only one type of thinking. That's not really, it's not a label for us. It's a label really for them that they can only see one way. And so I can really get that, that feeling of judgment. And I have a lot of empaths in my life, including highly sensitive children. My grandchildren, one is 9, one's 21. And the 9-year-old's really wide open. And I see that in how she expresses herself, deep emotions and feelings, that even some of her friends are like, what?
Yeah.
And I say to her, you know what, baby? You have an awakened heart. You never changed that heart to fit into someone else's. And that's what you were kind of feeling, right? You are diving so deep. And they just, and this isn't a judgment of them either. This was their path. But they had like the blinders that we put on our horses. My family used to raise horses where they can only see one way in front of them. So you must have felt like you were caught between 2 worlds, right? Here you are awakening, but you have the clinical background. You have that whole side of yourself, but suddenly this other side awakened. And how did you, I know you said you were obsessive, which I can understand why, but how did you learn to integrate the 2?
It took time. I had never set foot. This is the kind of fun factor. I had never set foot in the New Age section of a bookstore. So when the fire was prevented in the apartment building, which was essentially just me following my gut instinct to go back and listening to that instinct. I knew that I had heard something on a deeper level within myself, but I didn't know what. And so I went to the bookstore and there was nothing about psychic phenomenon really in any of the types of books, except for like Stephen King, which are like paranormal and fiction. So I ended up going into the New Age section, which was new to me, but there was a book there called Miracles of Mind. And it was written by Russell Targ, who was part of the CIA program down in Stanford that studied remote viewing. So they were studying sensory anomaly. And Jane Katra. And Jane Katra was a healer. So she was not only an empathic, but she was an empathic healer. And their book really helped me. It was like a stepping stone. And it educated me that this was possible, that there was a phenomenon through consciousness called non-local consciousness that they found through Stanford, where certain individuals could perceive future events, especially if they were highly charged emotional future events. And that was the thing that really stood out to me. So yes, it took time, but I just kept plodding forward, finding information like that. I do feel on some level subjectively, I felt divinely led to find materials that were helpful for me to frame what my own experiences were. But the other thing that I kind of noticed naturally is that sensitive people find each other. I think that we're attuned to the vibe in different environments. And when we resonate with certain people, we kind of collect together. And I found that phenomenon as well, that I had individuals who were safe and I could talk with them openly, more openly, especially when things happen between us where they're like, okay, I see what you mean. Like if we would call each other, we would know moments before we needed to call each other. I think everybody's experienced that phenomenon, like synchronistically. But for sensitives, especially people that are on the extreme of the spectrum, those kind of woo events happen a lot more often, and we do need to process them. And so it took me time. It took me time to figure out how to process them, who to process those events with, who was safe, who was going to be empathic and non-judgmental and accepting. But I wasn't raised in that environment. So it was really a lot of judgment for me initially because I was excited about it. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it with anybody who would listen because I was like, have you experienced this? Like I've experienced this. And that was not always the case. And so I learned over time how to process the excitement around those events with safe people. But it took me quite a while. And I actually lost some dear friends because of it. And I think that you were right by saying that it was a little bit of judgment because it didn't necessarily fit in with their spiritual belief system.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, Courtney. We're going to take a break and come back. But I think it's so important for our listeners to hear that it's something you just said where we are drawn together. I have a very large global community, as you do. And as I've gone deeper into this work, in owning my own truth, I notice a lot of my private clients are HSPs, right? Who are ready, who have done some work and are ready, they have strong boundaries. They're at a certain point in their journey. And we gather together, right? A lot of people in my Inspiration Lounge Facebook group, I'm noticing just from responses and their energy, I'm like, there's a whole world waking up to their gifts. So we'll be back in a moment. I'm with Courtney Marchesani of inspiredpotentials.com. We'll be back in a moment with some more juicy conversation.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Inspiration for a Woman's Soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back, my friends. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is the author of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive, Courtney Marchesani. So, Courtney, we were talking about, your personal journey and how you integrated, after your awakening, after being able to identify your experience. And something you said, too, about having never gone into the self-help section. I can remember 30 years ago, and I had my moment, and I set off on the path. It was like, when I got into that section, I'm like, where have you been all my life? It was kind of like you wanting to talk about everything all the time. I was like, oh, I want to learn this and this. I was like so wide open, like a sponge. Is that what you felt like too, is once you awakened and started learning more about your sacred gifts? Didn't it feel like you were just so wide open to wanting to learn it? Well, I know you were, to learning everything you could.
Yes. So I went to the bookstore. It was called Twice Sold Tales in Seattle, and it was near my apartment. And so I was a single mom at that time, and I found Miracles of Mind. And of course, that definitely opened me up. But I would also say one of the pivotal times, I think, was when I went through my divorce. So there was this opening up of who I really was, because I invested as an empath. I'm sure many people know when you're an empath, you are in a relationship and a lot of time and energy goes into your relationship. It's just part of being in a relationship. And so once I was extricated emotionally and energetically from that relationship, I saw this mushroom cloud of self exploration is the only way I can describe it. And along with that, I guess collecting and bringing back all the different parts of myself energetically that were probably diffused in my relationship, I started to see this massive uptick of synchronicities, almost like telepathic communication with other friends and loved ones. I started to see a great deal of empathic ability in my workplace. So yes, it was like a wellspring of me. And I guess I just didn't realize who me was really holistically up until that point. So it was like, wow, this is happening. This is happening. Oh my goodness, I didn't know I could do this. And so then I applied it to my workplace because I worked in a trauma center. And that was incredibly challenging on a number of levels, but I really loved my work. And I would sit in the middle of the day. I started to just intuitively know I needed to meditate. Now, I didn't learn meditation. I would say that when I was a child, I did weird stuff in our living room in Pennsylvania, like I would stand on my head or I would do different kinds of yoga poses. I don't know why. But I think that some intuitive wisdom came through me about, okay, it's time to meditate. So I would close my door in my office on the second floor in the mental health building, and I would just meditate quietly. And I think that that also expanded the awareness. I think that it grounded and anchored me in what was happening with the abilities, but I think it allowed me to be super aware on a higher level. So yes, it was like a wellspring. It was like I was open to anything. And as I was open, more and more, I would have lucid dreams. And so I started exploring those. And I would have stuff that happened in the daytime. So that's the correlation that I connect with that period, that what was happening in my nighttime, where I would get warnings and visions, started to happen in the daytime. So that's the integration piece that I think through the ending of that relationship, I was able to really, really home in on.
And I think something you just said too is brought me back when I went through my divorce. Around that same time, I was awakening, 30 years ago, because I've been with my honey now 27 years. And I remember, I think the name of the movie was Runaway Bride, Richard Gere, Julia Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
There's something you said about losing yourself when you're an empath. And at that time, I didn't have that name or that label. I didn't know. And you know the scene when she didn't know what kind of eggs she liked?
Yeah.
And she just had always eaten the eggs of the relationship she was in. Do you know, when he put it all out, I was bawling like a baby, because I remember saying, that's me. I would lose myself in every relationship to become who they were. So when I woke up 30 years ago, it was like, who the heck am I? Without any outside stuff. So what you just shared really resonated for my journey too. We had to find our way back to ourselves, our truth. Because we had such porous boundaries. I'll speak for myself. I had such porous boundaries because I didn't know of my sensitivities, that I didn't know where one person ended, which was usually someone dysfunctional, and where I began. And that integration for me was the boundaries, the healing, and owning my own truth and value. Is that what your book, Four Gifts of the Highly Sensitive, is it? To help them see their own energy, their own worth?
Yes. Well, I first want to acknowledge what you said about the runaway bride, because that scene, it was like looking in a mirror, right? I mean, you're like, oh my God, that's me. And I think that those breadcrumbs along the trail come to us in moments of reflection where we go, and whether that's because we're at that level of our own healing, and so we're calling to ourselves those moments where we can see and magnify who we really are. I believe in that unfolding. And that's what I experienced. I was not able to make the connection that the gifts were really a product of early childhood trauma until later. After I was out of working in mental health in the trenches, I started to look at trauma in a different light. I dug down deep into trauma and the experience of traumatic early life experiences and how that might be connected. Nobody was talking about this stuff at the time. Like you said, we didn't have words for empath. We didn't have words or concrete definitions for who we could, there were archetypes, all that stuff was out there. But I was trying to figure out the connection between, why do I have these extremes of precognitions, synchronicities? There's got to be a reason why. And so I started to look at trauma in a new way. And I think that's where I found some of that reflection that you're talking about with Runaway Bride. I was reading a book and I was like, it was another book where I was like, this is a mirror. It reflected to me all those experiences that were totally traumatic and related to that early life experience. So I think from there, what propelled me forward with the research was that this doesn't just happen. These abilities don't just happen, they're actually shaped, and we don't remember why, we're not conscious, but when we wake up to it through that discovery process, we can look back, like you're talking about with your own personal experience, and we can have that aha moment. So yes, I definitely had those aha moments, and my book is to reinforce for individuals who have the gifts, you're not alone. That's one of my first messages, because I'm an advocate. I've always been an advocate, whether it was working in mental health or working in housing and affordable housing or other issues that I care about, I'm always using advocacy. So I wanted sensitive people to know, one, you're not alone. There's a whole bunch of us out here, like you've said, who have done the work and acknowledge that the gifts are real. I think that's one of the things I struggled with the most in my early days, is people were like, that's not real. And even was labeled mentally ill at one time, that it was a mental illness that I was experiencing. I knew that wasn't true because I work with people who were chronically mentally ill. And my third piece about the book is that I think is the most important piece is what you're talking about, is to have faith in that growth process. I believe that sensitivity is an evolutionary mechanism. It's called the biological sensitivity survival response. And so because we are evolving as sensitives at this time in our communities, our tribes, right, on Earth, we've been given kind of a genetic responsibility to be able to be bellwethers for what's happening in the world. And that is complex. It's a complex idea, but it's part of the discovery around sensitivity that we do have an innate or an inherent ability to pick up on things like danger or things that are important for our tribe or our community, to be a warning system, kind of like the canary in the coal mine. So my part of the book, that third piece, is to really help sensitives evolve their own self, mind, body, and spirit, and so they can be the bellwethers for society in a healthy way.
So beautiful. And I want to say the name of the book again, 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. And I invite everyone to visit inspiredpotentials.com. Now, something else you just said before we go to a break, and then we'll jump on break and come back. I've come to believe that we're all wired, and this is my personal belief system, divinely wired, that we all have the gifts of connection and intuition and all that. But we either do the inner work to uncover the muck that is covering up our divine truth, right? Which is our connection to the divine, which is where the flow of information and precognition and everything comes. That was the biggest moment for me when someone said that to me. They go, Lynn, we're all divinely wired. We just forgot our truth. Because we look at children, they're so wide open. And then we send them off into the world, into the school system, into the world, and it's all smothered. And I'd love to talk about that more when we come back from our break. And I am here with Courtney Marchesani of InspiredPotentials.com, author of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. We'll be right back.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Do you feel overwhelmed and unsure about what steps to take to find peace, joy, and purpose in your life? Chris Groth is a spiritual mentor, energy healer, and best-selling author of the novel Soliloquy, a novel of healing, soul connection, and passion, and co-author of several best-selling books. Chris is passionate about helping women connect more deeply to their own truth, to promote healing, and restore balance to the body, heart, mind, and soul, so they can live a soul-connected life. Chris serves clients around the world through spiritual mentoring sessions, energy healings, and powerful custom-guided sound healing meditations that bring in the energy of crystal singing bowls. If you're ready to heal your heart, nurture your soul, and illuminate your path, schedule a complimentary virtual session with Chris today at chrisgroth.com. That's Chris with a K and GROTH.com.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. This is Linda Joy. I'm here with Courtney Marchesani today. We're talking about intuition, ESP, highly sensitives, and the process of, owning our gifts and finding our boundaries. So, Courtney, in your work, have you found, or do you have the belief system that we are all divinely wired with these gifts because it's who we are, and then those layers of trauma and living life smothers them and buries them? Or do you see explain, your point of view?
Well, I have gone from pillar to post on the belief systems because when I went through my own discovery process, of course, I was like, this is God, right? This is God, or angels talking to me, warned me about the fire to go back. I couldn't have done that myself. That's where I was. That was like the first level. Okay, I must have been picking up some kind of supernatural message. Over time, that perspective has evolved. I mean, it was reinforced a little bit by others because of their belief systems. They were like, that's God. You're talking to God. You've got to. I actually had one friend tell me, a dear friend, say, you've got to admit and claim this as God. Now, I was raised somewhat atheist, even though my mother was Methodist and had to marry my father in the Catholic Church. Okay, that's their story, but it definitely affected my sister and I growing up. I wasn't raised in the church. So because she kind of dropped out of the whole thing because she didn't think it was healthy for us kids. So I didn't have any of that programming, I would say, right, in my belief system about God. But I was always curious about who God was, like so curious as a child. I mean, I have memories of sitting on the floor in our living room and reading the Bible, like the children's version, the big overstuffed size. You remember those?
Yeah.
The big ones, right? And looking at the illustrations and being so curious. And so I wouldn't say that my belief system was like inherently, okay, this is divine guidance or a divine message, but I just didn't have faith or confidence in myself because the abilities were unfolding in such a magnitude that they couldn't be denied. I was struggling with it. I would say I struggled with it for a long time. So when I've written the book now, I have found a middle ground and at peace with it because we don't know. We don't know. What I do know through all my research is that the government's studying us. The government has actually done studies and paid for scientists to evaluate what's happening with intuitives and empaths in their neurology. And they're studying us and interviewing us. So I know that it's obviously a scientific question that they're trying to suss out. And they don't know either. But they know that people who are in this spectrum have more experiences where they perceive ghosts, individuals from the afterlife who have already passed. They have a higher level of correct decision and choices when they're put under different tests. So that's called intuitive. They hear voices more than other people that are considered to be discarnate beings. And so we know that it's real. We don't know where it comes from. My own personal belief system is that, yes, we are divinely wired. And I think that early trauma is an impact that makes that divine wiring, presses it into service much sooner, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. What I like to say to my clients, and again, based on my belief system that's evolved over 30 years, is Everything is energy. We're connected to the divine. Whatever the divine is for you, everyone's description of the divine is something different, right? Because that's their experience. But that we're an energy field and we have a straight line up to the divine. But until we clear the trauma, the stories, the old scripts, the false beliefs, it's like the old-fashioned rate cars, with a radio station that you had to tune every time you went out of town. You're like, shoot, I can't hear it. And you'd play with the tuner. I tell them we're going to always be tuning and clearing the channel. And that's up to us on this earthly plane to be doing the work, right? I don't experience, precognitive. I just have knowings, right? But not knowings of future, knowings of truth.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to trust it. Now, my clients will say, Lynn, you think of something, you birth, and it's born and manifests so quickly. I said, because I've built my intuitive trust muscles. Now, when I know something's right, I don't sit there in my mind going, but what if it doesn't work? What if this? I just know now. But I've built a relationship with that part of myself over the last, like I said, 3 decades. So that internal work is so important too. And in your book, you walk them through the 4 gifts. Why don't we talk about the 4 gifts? Just a brief, quick, overview of what they are.
I can. Yeah. So, and just to go back to what you just said and acknowledging, I have worked with sensitives, and so they use different language. That's the other important piece. I've heard what you're talking about, like promptings, that you get promptings. And that's
it's almost like an internal voice I hear.
Yes. So I was just wanting to validate what you said about your promptings and how you've developed a system where you pay attention to those promptings and then you feed the ones that you feel that are important for you.
I like that word too, promptings.
Yeah, because a lot of times
that way, but that is how it feels.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to just say that, because it's important to validate, right? And validate the internal response system. So yeah, I think that the first thing that I really jumped into, as I've said, was the precognitive aspect. That was fascinating to me. My scientific mind just couldn't let it go. Had to know why, had to be a reason. So intuitives is where I will start. Intuitives are individuals who are able to make decisions, get to A to Z without knowing how or why, and their answers are correct, or they're spot on. They're able to perceive patterns in the world and almost see like invisible lines that connect different pieces of a whole. So they're very holistic in their thinking, where they can look at different parts of a system and then bring things together. So that's how you see it play out in businesses, where you see people like, Elon Musk, the big guys who are basically saying when they're young, oh, I could do this and I could do that and I can connect it to this and that. And so they're able to perceive connectedness and then drive through with their decisions. That's one way to describe it. Intuitives are also, like I've just described, primed for warnings. They have an internal warning system that's natural, it's fluid, and it relies less on logic and gets them to the important piece. So that comes through in different ways of judging the environment, people to work with, people to be friends with. Intuitives are always going to see something, and it bubbles up through their subconscious mind. So that's intuitives. They have information in a flash. And then there's the empathic gifts. And so empaths, in the book, I go into the different types of empaths, because we could say, one empath will have one experience in an environment, but because they have a completely different nervous system, somebody else who's also an empath is going to have a completely different experience from the same environment, where they're going to feel this depth and quality in the environment that the other people in the room aren't picking up on. So empaths are able to feel other people's feelings. They're able to feel the physical space in their own way, their own subjective perception. They're able to connect deeply with others. So I also go into the compassionate empath. And this is something that's really important. Compassionate empaths, how I define it, is that they not only feel everything and feel other people's feelings or feel that tension They also feel between themselves and others, if there's someone in distress, that they need to do something about it, that they care. They really feel like they can help, and they really feel like they should help. They should do something. So there is an action of compassion associated with the deep empathy. But then there's other type of empaths, like spiritual empaths, who I call, like this would be like the divine empaths. So they have what I call a supersensory function. This supersensory function is actually unique to spiritual empaths because what they're able to do is kind of step up into that transcendent mode, like you and I have described, and see things at a divine level, more fluidly, more easily than other types of empaths. Then there's the empathic healer. That's another subset. Empathic healers are born to be healers, in our environment. And I go into that in the book. And then there's the expressives. So expressives are individuals who synthesize in their environment. They have an aesthetic perception for beauty. So they're always perceiving beauty. They're always looking at the world, the way it works, and how they can find meaning and pull meaning out of it, which is creativity. So they use their creativity in ways to express. They have a need to express. So they're the communicators, the writers, the painters, the sculptors, right? It goes into everything from being like a literary reviewer. The expressives are just in their mode when they are looking at beauty and finding a way in their life and through the world to create meaning from it. And then there's the visionaries, and the visionaries are the ones who they have like an adept, beautiful capacity to use their mind's eye, their internal mind's eye, to envision reality in a new way. So there certain types of visionaries have certain types of abilities, but typically theirs is problem solving. They find problems, and then in their visual mental field, they're always finding solutions for those problems, regardless of what it is. So these are the cinematographers, the film editors, the people like the futurists, even literary people who write futurist stories or dystopians, and they're finding solutions for the problems of our current time. That's how I describe the gifts, the 4 gifts in a nutshell.
It's so powerful. We're going to take our last break, and I have so many questions for you in our last segment. We'll be back in a moment. I'm with Courtney Marchesani, author of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. Learn more at inspiredpotentials.com. I promise we'll be right back.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Does the energy in your life or home feel stuck or stagnant? Your home surroundings may be impacting your mood, energy level, and even how much money you attract. It's time to clear the energy blocks in your immediate surroundings so you can attract enhanced health, happiness, and abundance. Carrie Miller, Feng Shui expert, speaker, and coach, and the author of Feels Better, Flows Better, Feng Shui for Inspired Living, merges her sacred skills in Feng Shui, space clearing, aromatherapy, and coaching to support her clients in making subtle changes to their home that allow energy to flow and create spaces that are comfortable, functional, supportive, and inspiring. Whether you're called to clear one room or your full home, Carrie offers Feng Shui and energy clearing services on-site or virtually to meet your needs. Learn more at carriemillerconsulting.com.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm Linda Joy, and I'm here with Courtney Marchesani, author of The 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. So I have some questions, right?
Sure.
So we have intuitive, we have empaths, we have expressives, and visionaries. So I was just trying to listen and feel into, could someone be a combination of 2?
Yes. So
Okay.
there are different types that unfold as you get to know an individual. And so it's not cut and dry. It's not black and white. So I developed the sensitive gifts test to kind of do an array of questions that would zero in on those primary and secondaries is what I call them. So I've been able to combine the intuitive visionary as definitely a specific type.
That was mine too, but with the creativity.
Yes. And so you also have intuitive empaths. So those are the individuals that have cognitive and intuitive empathy that really flow in a certain way. And then there's empathic expressives. Empathic expressives are very, very much a certain type. And because they run in a certain pattern, you can see that they're empathic and expressive. And then there's also the empathic visionary. That's one that's kind of emerging right now through my research, where I'm seeing this new pattern come through that didn't really fit in any other pattern. But as it's unfolding, it's clear that it's empathic visionary.
It's powerful. And I want to tell us about the quiz and how they can get to it.
Yeah, so it's on my website, inspiredpotentials.com, and it's the top click where it says Learn Your Gifts. And so you can go through the process. It is a little bit long, but there's a reason for that. And so then you'll get an email back from me, which describes, your gifts and basically the importance of acknowledging them and how they can be used in the world if you tap into them.
That is beautiful. I think it's powerful too. And yeah, I knew intuitive. And then when I heard expressive, I'm like, okay, I can't live without my creativity.
Right.
My creativity is all channeled through my businesses now. That's why a lot of people go, how can you run 5 media brands and have Fridays off and take 14 weeks off every year? And I'm like, because I'm living my soul's truth. It's fun for me. It's ease, grace, and flow. It's not work for me. So I connected with that. But then when you got to the visionary description, I was like, okay, so I got some thinking to do, but the creativity is important for me ever since I was a kid. It's how I process, but my worlds merged when I started listening in all my businesses, even from the first one 30 years ago. It was, I got a knowing. I opened the business with, being a welfare mom, runaway high school dropout, used $2,400 to start a business, Courtney, based on this knowing, but I didn't have that language back then, right? I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And ended up winning Entrepreneur of the Year for the state of Mass through the SBA, flew out to Beverly Hills to tell my life story, all because something said you need to quit your corporate job, which I had just got. My family wanted to kill me, and start this business that supports women and children. And then my whole journey unfolded because I trusted that one thing that made sense to no one else. It didn't make sense on paper. It didn't make sense to family, that you get off welfare, you finally get a corporate job with all the benefits and all that, and you walk away. That one moment, I look back now and say, that's when I noticed that the more I listen to that internal voice, the more I am living authentically. And I think that was one of the little things that began the journey, kind of like, the things that showed up for you, the fire, the building. Now that's what I want. I want others to learn. And I really want to encourage everyone to grab a copy of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. Whether you see yourself as a sensitive, or maybe you have a loved one as a sensitive, because I think it's important that it helps us understand any sensitives in our lives, even if we may not at this time identify as one. Would you agree, Courtney?
I would definitely agree. I think that's the leading edge that I start my book with, because my daughter said when I started exploring all of this, she was like, I feel like sensitivity is a dirty word. And so I put that in my introduction because she was so perceptive that, there is this stigma that if you're sensitive, there is something wrong, or that you're wounded, or that there's just, it's a disorder or a disease. And
or that you're weak in a world
or that you're weak.
We appear strong and put on these personas.
Exactly.
I think the best leaders are the ones that are empaths. Wait a minute, let me clarify. The best leaders are the ones who are empaths, who've done the inner work and have strong boundaries, right? Who aren't porous, who don't pull in everyone's energy. I think we are the ones that are going to change the world.
I think we are changing the world. I mean, I think that what this touches on, what I was talking about earlier, is that there seems to be an evolutionary function. Now, that's hard when we're in the day-to-day, right? But when you zoom out and you take that sky-high view of what's going on with sensitives, we are most definitely part of movement and progress in a new way. And I think that biological sensitivity survival mechanism that I was talking about is hard to understand, and it's hard to study, and it's hard to test, especially when we're talking about things like intuition being the leading edge of this evolution. But like what you just talked about, how you made that simple decision, but it was so powerful for you, and it changed your life. Sensitives are being asked, I think, evolutionarily through our societies, through our cultures, to make those leading edge decisions in order to make our own process more equitable, right? Fair, less social and racial inequality. I mean, sensitives are really tip of the spear, I think, in terms of leading a lot of these movements, because we're saying enough is enough. It's time to shape our societies in new ways that's equitable for all. And we are asking those questions. And so I do extrapolate out the gifts into an evolutionary unfolding, because I think we don't understand it yet. One of the things I've been able to connect with my work through the trauma work, and understanding that the extremes, which I call hypersensitivity, right, which is not always helpful for people in their lived experience because they just perceive too much. But one of the things they seem to have is this ability to adapt. It's what you're talking about, right? From being a child and the children of today versus where we were when we were children, and the awakenings and the evolution that's happened, is that sensitive people, because of this survival mechanism, seem to be able to adapt like chameleons almost. So this is also emerging because I'm still discovering what it means. But sensitives seem to have this ability to perceive when they're not welcome, or when there might be some judgment, or where there might not be, it might be a hostile environment, and they adapt and they go into like a chameleon mode where they become what is needed in the environment.
I think that's so powerful for us to have that awareness of that's coming.
Yes. It's important because if you're adapting, think about this. If you're adapting as a sensitive in every environment that you're going in, because you have this intelligence to be able to perceive what's needed and then become that, like a chameleon, where are you in that process?
Is there information on your website about this part of the process? Because we're coming to the end of our time together. But I want to invite everyone to go to inspiredpotentials.com, grab a copy of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive, but follow Courtney on social media and her website, because as you can hear, my friends, the research continues. This is like an evolution for all of us that are highly sensitive. And Courtney, first off, I want to say, I am just so grateful that you are on this path and doing this deep work and bringing it out to all of us. I so appreciate your presence in the world, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me this time to discuss it. Obviously, you can hear my passion. I'm super passionate about it. That obsession has turned into passion.
And that's why I wanted you to hear that passion, that commitment to serving all of us who need this information in order to navigate this life. So I'm going to give you URL again. That's inspiredpotentials.com. I invite everyone to visit Courtney, follow her on social media, and keep up with the beautiful work she's doing in the world. And Courtney, thank you. We could have gone for 2 hours, my friend.
I know. Thank you. I think we did a good job.
Oh, we rocked it, and thank you. Until next time, everyone, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness, my friends.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.